So, Wayne, look, the idea here is everybody is hopping in the car for something to do on July 4th. At least that's what I thought. But the more and more I read online about what's happening, I don't know if anybody's going
LA beaches are shut down.
officially closed.
Yeah, it happened yesterday.
Well, I know they're not doing fireworks in South Carolina, where the Hartzell family historically likes to take July 4th, and they're not doing fireworks locally. I've circumvented that by loading up on fireworks at Costco. So,
you're that guy.
Yeah, man, I'm a rad dad.
You're the dude in the neighborhood that drives my dog nuts because you're lighting off fireworks illegally. Is it illegal there?
That's a great question. Here's the thing.
Nobody cares, by the way. Nobody cares.
These are not industrial strength fireworks. These are like in North Carolina, you can't buy mortars. You can't the ones that you shoot up into the tube. These are fancy sparklers. So we'll be responsible, but
I know.
It's going to be a very different kind of July 4th weekend for obvious reasons. And so, look, we want to give the people some football content. There's plenty of COVID content out there, right? If you want that, take your pick on what cable news source or online source or doctor or wherever. There's
the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, although the graph is starting to kind of tilt up a little bit, and I don't want to wade in those waters.
It is.
It's not looking good.
No.
As you and I discussed before we started here, we're feeling a little less optimistic about football than we did a week ago, and that's the scary part because it's a roller coaster. One week you feel good, one week you don't.
Is it bad, Stephen, that my son, my 14-year-old, who's getting ready to play high school football and everything that they're doing, and I say that just like what we've talked about a million times. I mean, I'm very skeptical that they're going to have a season. They've talked about moving it to a different, to spring. They've talked about all kinds of crazy stuff. But I had about 10 boys at my house playing football in the Greenbelt last night and then swimming in our pool and making s'mores by a fire pit. And I hate that these young, men at all and women of all levels are, we know that the world's attacking a bigger picture right now. I feel like we're being molded a little bit and forced into change, which is probably a good thing. But there's so many people that and I don't know if everybody grasps the concept of how an athlete's mind works. I've never really thought that people truly grasp that on game days when I was in high school, you might as well not even have talked to me. I mean, I was just head down, teacher, leave me alone. I'm thinking about later. And I was obsessed with it. And it's kind of how I always was. And I think most athletes are like that. I mean, I know that we can do other things too, don't get me wrong. But to take that away, something that you're so excited for, and and again, think about whatever your passion is. That's what you want to do, and now you can't do it. It's difficult because it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort too. It's not just all fun. It's hard. And when you don't get to do the things that you've worked for, think about the seniors that are trying to, show what they can do in the draft, or the seniors in high school that are trying to show the colleges what they can do. And they're going to, because there's some kids that are already on everybody's radar, but there's always those kids that come in as a senior and show everybody what they're made of, and they end up getting scholarships late. So this affects a lot of people in ways that I don't know if we're all, always thinking about.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, you're a former athlete. I'm just a fan. I'm just a guy who watches.
And you, yes.
But still, it's a passion of mine to watch it and to cover it and to talk about it.
Yep.
And the realization that may not be happening is more real now than probably ever. Probably about as real now as it was back in March when I was driving home from Nashville because the SEC basketball tournament literally got canceled while we were there.
Yeah.
It's that same kind of, just a tinge of fear and a little bit of the unknown, right? Everybody's a little scared. I mean, even the people who don't want to wear masks because they think that, God's going to protect them, or because it's not, whatever. Nobody knows. It's and we have no control over it, Wayne. You and I were sitting here talking about it. We want football to be here, but we have no control over whether or not that's actually going to be the case. So look, here's the deal. We could do a COVID show. We're not going to do that. I gave Wayne homework. I said, Wayne, I need your top 10 college football storylines of 2020. But here's
what number one is.
COVID.
What has to be?
Well, that's the thing.
And it's not necessarily whether or not we're going to have a season. It's like, will COVID stop the season? Because I think that's more interesting.
Will there be
if we actually start
regular season? Sure.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is halfway through the year, we're going to have may have major outbreaks. We may go into that time of the season when the Big Ten starts getting, snowy and rainy and nasty, and people are going to get flu, influenza A, influenza B, COVID-19. It's going to be an issue. And so for me, that's got to be the number one story, because even if we start, how much of a panic will we already noticed what kind of a panic we had with, players at Clemson and players all over the country, NFL players, college players, NBA players. As soon as people start testing positive, we go straight into panic mode. And either we're going to go into this thing and say, hey, we're going to play. And if people get sick, here's the plan. Or I don't think we can do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I just don't think we can do it, because to me, shutting everything down, I keep coming back to the same thing. If you shut it down, Stephen, just like we did before, and things get better. You just talked about the curve earlier, and I apologize about keeping going on COVID, but I think it's a huge part of this. And then nothing else is on COVID after this. Once you open up again, if there's no vaccine, what's going to happen? We're going to have another spike. It's inevitable. It's almost like, hey, let's shut it down for a couple of weeks and flatten the curve, and then we're going to go right back into it, and everybody's going to go out because everybody's going to be pent up. Are we going to open the bars again? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? I just almost feel like they're stalling for a vaccine. And it's like, and then to be honest with you, if you study vaccines, I don't know, we get flu shots every year. We don't get one that lasts forever.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't know enough about the science of this to be a little skeptical of all that stuff, but I just don't know. Maybe the more people that get it, I was telling my son the other day, it'd probably be better if we had, maybe we were asymptomatic and we had it already, but then they tell you don't know if you're going to get it back. They haven't proven that yet.
I've talked to a lot of guys in our industry who call college basketball and travel a lot during the winter, doing 2 games a week on planes. And yeah, some of them are chartered planes, but still they're in hotels. They're moving around arenas. They're shaking hands. I talked to a lot of people, probably 6 or 8 people, who were like, I had something this winter. I don't know what it was, but I wasn't right. Like I know that I wasn't right. And so they've gone and gotten tested for the antibodies. So look, there's so many avenues and threads that we could take this, because you're spot on, man. It's July 1st right now, okay?
Yep.
As this podcast is being released, we're in that uptick right now that you're just talking about. What happens if you hit pause and then you say, okay, it's safe to play, and then you realize there's an outbreak in a locker room or in a weight room or in a position group?
Yeah.
Like Felder talked about this, Michael Felder from Stadium TV. We talked about this the other day. What if you're in a position group? Like, what if you're in a defensive line or offensive line meeting room and somebody's asymptomatic and you're in a room? You guys do everything together. You eat together, you huddle together, you guys go through drills, and now you got no offensive line, because all 9 of your offensive linemen, or 12 or whatever it is, the dudes who got redshirted, everybody, and now you can't take the field. Okay. Yep. I mean, so to your point, what if there's teams out there that are capable of playing 12 regular season games, and then there's others who can't, because they had to forfeit, or they couldn't take the field, or their opponent couldn't take the field? That's going to be interesting. And the football implications of that, if you're the College Football Playoff Committee, and let's hope we get to late November, early December, and those guys are making meaningful decisions. How do you evaluate a team that's played 12 regular season games and then maybe another from the SEC or the Pac-12 that's only been able to play 9? What do you do?
Hey, Steven, you're gonna like this one, but Vegas.
Yeah, talk to me.
No, but think about it.
Yeah.
Think about it. How the heck are the people that are really good at, we say it every year, people at Vegas know something. Well, they're not going to, how are you going to handicap games where everything you just said is in this? Do they shut it down? Do they say these games are off the board because there's too many people? I mean, there's going to be a lot of money lost there as well, because I don't know how. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be there's a lot of not that that's everybody's number one concern, but it's a huge part of this.
It's a sidebar. For example, what if rumor Okay, because it's all going to be, because here's the thing: there's HIPAA, there's laws about releasing this information and making it public.
Right.
What if there's rumor one week that Trevor Lawrence or Travis Etienne can't play?
Yep.
Okay, well the rumor is going to be they can't play because they've got COVID. Okay, so now you're out not just Saturday but next Saturday because you got to quarantine for 14 days supposedly. Are you ever going to come back? Look, there's tons of avenues that you could take that. But you're right. It's going to be a thing. So, look, we've reached our max one COVID storyline.
That was my number one story.
Okay, well, we're going to alternate. That's how this is going to be because I don't know your list and you don't know mine. So while we're talking Clemson, ironically, one of my top storylines of 2020 is anyone other than Clemson going to show up in the ACC? Because that's a conference that, and Wayne, you've got perspective on this as a West Coast guy. It's a little different for me in the Southeast. I mean, I'm in ACC country. I'm in North Carolina. But look, the ACC used to be a balanced conference of programs that year in and year out were proud double-digit win programs. Florida State has fallen off a cliff. Virginia Tech is mediocre. Miami is, I mean, they're on the face of a milk carton. I mean, when was the last time the Hurricanes were relevant? I know that Mark Richt.
They may have a quarterback now, though.
They do have De'Aaron King, which is cool. That's
I mean, and a quarterback like that may really, really help. A guy that can move around and be an athlete, and that may solve some problems that they seem like they've had for a long time.
That'd be nice. I'm hearing things about North Carolina with Mac Brown and the recruiting and Sam Howell and things.
That offense
looking good. That's great. But right now, Clemson is just lapping the field. And it would be nice if somebody other than the Tigers would show up in that league. Florida State, I looked it up the last 3 years. They're 18-20. 18 wins, 20 losses for Florida State the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
That's embarrassing. That can't happen.
Embarrassing.
So it'd be nice if somebody other than Clemson showed up. That's one of my top storylines for college.
So obviously there's certain programs that are going to be in the storylines every week. Okay, because football has become an 8 program, maybe 5 program league. All of college football. It's about 5 teams every year. You look at the list and who are your top 4, and it's the same teams that they always are. Because when you look at what they do, they're amazing and they're elite, and they recruit at such a ridiculous level that they replace 5-star athletes with other 5-star athletes. Now they may get younger at times, and some of the programs are so good that when you lose, for example, if you're Alabama and you lose Tua, and we know that they did not make the playoffs last year, but that does not mean that Alabama isn't ridiculously loaded with talent, because they always are. But they're so good that even whoever plays, whether it's Jones or it's what's the guy's name, Bryce Young, the freshman that's coming in, whoever plays, they're going to be there. They're just that good. They may not win, but they're going to be there. Clemson's the same way. I think that even without Trevor Lawrence, we talked with Serbs last week about this. I think that makes them an elite team. But even without him, even if he got hurt week 1, and I hope he doesn't, because I love watching the kid play, they're still probably going to win the ACC. And I'm not trying to belittle everybody else, but we've reached a point in our game where the programs that the gap, in my opinion, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And it's almost like Ohio State, let's be honest with you. Ohio State's just feels like they're going to win the Big Ten every year.
Well,
they have so much talent.
I got something for them a little bit later, at least on my list. But you're right about Clemson, man. Look, I'd like for them to have to earn it at some point. Like Syracuse 2 years ago won 11 games. I mean, who's going to give them a run for their money this year in the ACC, if anyone? It'd be nice if somebody showed up besides Dabo's guys. That's all.
I think that you got to give it a little bit of time. And one of the things I'm going to talk about later is new coaches. And I think Norvell, even though he's had a little bit of a shaky, we talked about this last week, he's a good coach. I've got to see him, up close and personal on what he does and what he created, and he is a very good coach. I think Florida State's in a good place. I think they made a very good move, and so I do like that. We'll see with Miami. I don't know. Miami reminds me of a school that loves to live in the past and act like they're the Miami of old, and I think they need to become whatever Miami needs to be.
You know about those, don't you, Wayne?
It's funny because at UCLA, and I said this for a long time, especially with our basketball program, John Wooden's not around anymore. And John Wooden, to me, it was in an era that's not like today's era. I mean, how many, Coach K is a great coach, right? Yeah. Did he win 10 national championships? No.
He's got 4.
Not even close. Yeah. We look at today's era is not that era. Those types of things aren't going to happen anymore. You're not going to have the USC football tradition where you could go out and recruit, not only the players you want, but the players that the other teams want too, because you have more scholarships. I mean, things have changed, but the Alabamas, Ohio States, Clemson's, and I'm going to leave it at those 3 because I think Oklahoma typically is that 4th team that we assume is not going to win the national championships. Like, it's come down to these 3 elite programs, and everybody else is kind of lagging behind.
We have gone through 2 storylines. We're alternating. I don't know your list. You don't know mine, although I think based on what you've said, you're going to steal a few off my list. We've talked COVID. We've talked Clemson in the ACC. The ball is in your court. What's another storyline that you're looking forward to on the field in 2020?
So we talked about it in the last segment. Like, I think, a lot of people are going to say, which kills me because when you look at, top 4 teams, you've got Ohio State, you've got Clemson. This one may be a little bit tricky because, the SEC is the SEC, but Alabama, I think people don't think they're going to be left out 2 years in a row. And then Oklahoma is replacing a quarterback, but that may be a little bit tricky in that conference, the Big 12, between Oklahoma and maybe Texas, who it seems like Sam has been there forever as their quarterback, but that may be an actual thing this year that matters. But again, we're talking about those 4 teams, and out west, I think people are talking about Oregon. But if you look at Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, and Oklahoma, my question is, or my headline is, who's this year's LSU? Who's this year's team that's going to kind of, LSU's always been a solid SEC program, just like Auburn is in Georgia and Florida, but they don't win national championship every year. They don't make it to the playoffs every year. Who's going to be that team this year? Is it going to be Oregon? They have to replace a quarterback too, but they may have one of the best defenses in the country. Notre Dame's got a guy in Ian Book that feels like he's been playing for a while now. Mm-hmm. Okay, they might be solid this year. Is it Georgia or Florida? I'm not sure if the quarterback at Florida is. It seems like they're always struggling to find, their next Tim Tebow.
You don't like Kyle Trask?
I do.
Season, baby. Let's go.
I actually thought that Kyle Trask was 1,000 times better than Felipe. Right?
Yeah, Felipe Franks. Yeah, I don't even know. He
just because
somewhere. I have to look that up where he's at.
Well, because I truly believe that he was like, and again, this is going to sound terrible coming from an old quarterback, but quarterbacks need to be quarterbacks. They don't need to act like receivers. And I always thought that Franks acted like he was a receiver. He's like, standing there on the outside. He wanted the glory. He wanted everybody to look at him all the time. Dude, put your head down and play quarterback. Just be the dude, okay?
By the way, Felipe Franks is at Arkansas.
Great.
Just that,
great.
I remember that, but that blew my mind.
And I'm rooting for him. Go be a guy, but he just, for whatever reason, watching him run around in the stands and whatever he was. So trust me, I think Trask is better, but when you watch him play, does he make you feel like he's going to lead you to the promised land? Is anywhere near what a Joe Burrow could be? I hope he is. I hope guys improve and get better. And to be honest with you, the Joe Burrow story is as much about the offense that they installed.
Yeah.
And kind of, and what they did with him, because a lot of these programs, the coaches are still stuck in we have to play great defense. We have to, we have to be able to run the ball. We have to be able to, I know the SEC is. Exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But, you've got to let, in the modern game with the rules set up to favor the offense the way it is, you gotta score. And we've seen Alabama make the transition. And we've seen a lot of programs do it. Auburn's in the process right now, and that's another team. So anyway, that's my question. Who's that other team? Could be Penn State. Could be, who's that team from that next tier that could be the LSU of this year that not only gets into the playoff, but actually can win the whole thing?
That's good. I like that. That's similar to something that I've got, but we'll save it for later. LSU was not only a playoff debutante, right? They made their first appearance, but to your point, they won the whole damn thing.
Yep.
Let's shift gears a little bit. Teams, you're talking about teams that may overachieve this year. Let's talk about a team that has underachieved for the better part of the last decade, the Michigan Wolverines. One of my top storylines for 2020, can Michigan save themselves? And look, I'm not trying to come after my man, John Jansen. I love Big John. And if he were here, he'd probably, he'd probably throw me through this drywall behind me. But it's time, man. Like, Michigan has been owned by Ohio State for the last, not just decade, the last 2 decades. I mean, 14 out of the last 15 have gone the way of the Scarlet and Gray. 8 in a row. And look, we've seen this before in other rivalries, Wayne. Like, Georgia-Florida used to be a one-way street when Steve Spurrier was there, and Georgia just could not get over the hump. At some point, it does kind of define you. And Jim Harbaugh is a very well-compensated, very talented football coach. He knows way more about football than you and I do. But at some point, Michigan's going to have to beat their rival for us to take them seriously. And winning 9 games a year isn't going to cut it. So one of my top storylines for this year is, and Michigan's got a lot of question marks. They lost a lot of pieces. And by the way, Ohio State's got, Justin Fields, who's a sophomore. I beg your pardon. Yeah, redshirt sophomore coming back. So they're going to be just fine. But at some point, Michigan's got to not just win that game, but, kind of flex on their rival, because Ohio State, I mean, they put up 60 some odd points 2 years ago, put up 58 last year. I mean, they've just been running away with this rivalry. So can Michigan save themselves? Can they improve on what's been a dismal November against their rival for the last 8 years? Got to do better.
So what was Justin Fields' numbers last year? Wasn't it like 40 touchdowns and like 1 interception? I mean, wasn't it like something stupid? I just read it the other day, and it almost made my heart missed a beat. So you're saying this is the year that when I personally think this is Ohio State's national championship team. I think that if Justin Fields can be even better, and I'm not that worried about Dobbins being gone, even though I loved J.K. Dobbins last year, because I have a feeling they have other guys that are going to be pretty good because of what I talked about earlier. So what you're saying is one of the problems I actually have with college football right now. It's the top 3 or 4 programs, then another maybe 8 to 10 programs, and then everybody else. And it may be more than that. There may be, you could start throwing in, if you start throwing in the perennial top 25 type teams, that have a outside chance at a conference champion. But if you're playing in a conference with Ohio State, they win it every year. I don't have to look. How many conferences in the last decade, how many have Ohio State won? I'm not looking it up. I'm not using my computer, but it's a lot. How about Oklahoma in the Big 12? How many have they won?
Yeah.
Most of them, right?
Yeah.
Alabama, most of them. Clemson, most. It's like these programs are winning at such a high clip that when you throw out a comment like that, when you get rid of Jim Harbaugh, who wins 9, 10 games every year, does not win the big one. I get it. How many programs, and I know this is going to sound terrible, and I know that people are thinking that makes me sound like maybe I'm a loser or something, but how many programs realistically, and there's a lot of journalists that have attacked this issue, how many programs realistically can win a national championship or even be in the mix every single year? Michigan, you just mentioned JJ. He was on a national championship team, correct? Wasn't it when was that? 97? When was that?
The 97 season and the 98 Rose Bowl, I believe.
That was a long time ago. That was just a little bit after I played, okay? And back in those days, UCLA in those same decade won 20 straight games with Cade McNown, and we're 1 win against Miami in the Hurricane game away from playing in the BCS national championship game. Times change. Things are not the same as they were back then, and Michigan is winning a lot of games. They're selling out their stadium, and I know they always do this, and people watch Michigan football. Is it frustrating? Absolutely. Do I agree that even Harbaugh's sitting there going, how the heck do we beat these guys? But at the end of the day, when Ohio State gets pretty much what they want, it's like, we're going to open up the store first, and we're going to allow Coach Day, we're going to allow Dabo, we're going to allow Saban in the room first, and they get to walk down the 5-star aisle, the 4-star aisle, and even some 3-star aisles only if those guys have been underrated.
Right.
and they're going to pick who they want. And then everybody else, and then it's like everybody's waiting in the COVID line outside the store 6 feet apart. And they're kind of, and there's a long line of coaches, and the worse you are, the farther down you are, and then you get to come in and select who you want. And when you're competing against that, and the amount of money that goes into these programs, and the amount of coverage they get on ESPN, and the amount of, you see what I'm getting at? It's very, very difficult. I think Harbaugh has been a very successful coach. I really do. What you're saying, though, is that Michigan sees themselves as a team that's won one national championship in a very, very long time, which is not bad. They're a great program. But if you get rid of Harbaugh, what are you going to replace him with?
Well, hang on. I'm not advocating that you need to get rid of Harbaugh. I'm just saying that it's time. At some point, you've got to take the leap, and that leap for Michigan means beating Ohio State, which is, look, it's not easy.
It's a monumental task.
I'm not saying that you can just roll the ball out there and expect to beat those guys. But at this point, you are, despite doing all the other things that you mentioned, winning a lot of games, selling a lot of tickets, and recruiting some really talented players to Ann Arbor, like you gotta take the next leap. Look, I'll give you another example. Georgia is a very good team. Okay,
right.
That's a team that is probably on that short list of single-digit number teams that can compete and or win a national championship in college football. They've got the resources, they've got the players, they've got the coach. The last time they won a national championship, Wayne, was 40 years ago.
Yes.
1980. Like, Herschel's not walking through that door anytime soon, and they've got guys all over the NFL. But it's the same thing. At some point, like, I get what you're saying, man, because this is longtime listeners know that this is a battle that we rage on a regular basis. But if you want parity, go watch baseball, man. Like, if you want to know about teams that come out of nowhere and can win a championship, it's called Major League Baseball, man. The Nationals started 15-30 last year. Like, there's stories like that, but college football is not one of those cases where a team's going to come out of nowhere and win it all. It just doesn't happen.
And don't get me wrong. Like, listen, we've had powerhouses throughout. And like, again, you mentioned that. I was on the sidelines for the Pete Carroll USC years. Mm-hmm. 2 national championships. Great teams. I was also on the sidelines for a 13-9 victory where UCLA pretty much knocked USC out. So it can happen. I mean, UCLA fans still, if you say 13-9, they get a big grin on their face like, man, I love that Pat Cowan. I love that. And they could tell you everything about that game. It was amazing. So it can happen. I'm not saying that Michigan isn't good enough to beat Ohio State. They've been close. I'm just saying it's when you're going up against, because here's what happens in college football. When USC was winning at that with Pete Carroll, I mean, we saw Pete Carroll chewing that gum a million times on TV. Do you think that helps recruiting?
Sure.
Do you think, and then when you watch, all the way back to who I think was their best quarterback in Carson Palmer, imagine what he would have done with Moore and Mike Williams, all the way through, Matt Leinart and, John David Booty and, whoever you want to, who only won 2 Rose Bowls, but yet they act like he was some sort of, they were so good at that time that winning 2 Rose Bowls was kind of like, he wasn't that good. It's like people create, and like you love to do this too. Like, if you're not winning, Alabama, if Saban doesn't go to the playoffs this year, you're probably going to say he should probably step down. He should probably retire. Because two years of not going to the playoffs, he's probably lost it. The game has passed him by. You don't think that there won't be some stirrings if they don't get back in? I know that sounds crazy, but people are fanatical. That's why they call them fans. But anyway, I need to get back on track here a little bit. But it was crazy when that happened. And you know what it took for them to not keep winning? It took a coach leaving and them going on probation.
Yeah.
So, and they're still trying to get back from that, to be honest with you. The programs like Georgia, if you're a Georgia fan, you get to see really good football every year. Michigan, you get to see really good football every year.
Yep.
There are programs where you are in it. When you get into November, you're in it. I always said, if you have a team where you have a chance at a division and a conference championship late in the year, that is when football is so much fun. When you're out of it 4 or 5 weeks into the season, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's like, we hope we go 6-6 and make it to a bowl game. And I speak from experience. That's not fun. Yeah. It's a lot more fun when you're in it. So yeah, I know we want to win every year, but it seems like the same teams are winning every year.
Yeah, that's part of like a different discussion for me, though. It's like, would you rather be part of a team where you're winning national championships every 7 years and what's going on in between there is rocky, okay? Or
Right.
do you want to do what Virginia Tech does or has done, which is win 9 or 10 games a year, go play in a December 31st bowl somewhere, and never bring home a title?
Well,
Like,
what's the correct answer, though?
sports fan, I know what it's like to not win titles,
Yeah.
okay? I know. And I would do a lot of things to win a championship. It'd be really nice. And look, Georgia was there. They were knocking on the door, 2nd and 26, and then Tua broke their heart. Like, I mean, it's not like they've been in the wilderness, but my point is I would rather be in the LSU camp and win a national championship every 7 years and have a couple trophies in the cabinet than be consistently doing what Michigan's doing, which is winning 9 games and you know, getting some pub and having rah-rah stuff from our coach, but no natties. But that's me, and I know that I don't speak for everybody, but I want the chips.
I still think if Georgia would have just run Sonny Michel more, they would have guy got like 10 yards a pop in that game. Just give him the rock.
Hey, we can do an hour on that show, man. I mean, we
Oh
can
my
do
gosh.
that. We can break that national championship down. You were there, okay? You were there. I don't need to tell you, but let's move on. I talked about Michigan as one of my top storylines. Wayne, back to you, buddy. What do you got?
All right. Is it a 2-man Heisman race this year? Is it Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence? Is it already, I mean, do we even need to think about anybody else? And then I'm going to add to that, does Travis Etienne hurt Trevor Lawrence in this argument? Because it seems like Justin Fields, if he puts up numbers like he did last year, and if Etienne and Lawrence both have amazing years, which they probably will. Anyway, question is it a 2-man race?
That's a good question. You brought up Vegas earlier. All of the favorites in Vegas to win the Heisman Trophy are quarterbacks. Fields at 7-2 is the favorite. Trevor Lawrence right behind him at 4-1. Then it gets interesting. Jamie Newman at Georgia, the Wake Forest transfer, 10-1. Spencer Rattler, the Oklahoma quarterback, 12-1. Mac Jones.
By the way, slow down.
De'Aaron King, 20-1. All quarterbacks.
So when we look at Oklahoma.
By the way, have you seen the Spencer Rattler kid play?
Yeah.
Like, have you seen his clips and stuff?
No, yeah, I know.
It's pretty intriguing, man. Not gonna lie.
And wouldn't you love to be a part of a program where you knew that he's gonna, whether or not he gets it or not, because of name recognition or whatever, that he's going to put up Heisman numbers no matter what?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's hard not to agree with the thought process of a guy like Spencer Rattler when you see what Lincoln Riley has been doing in Norman. Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be like, hey, coach, I'm all in. Whatever you want, I'm your guy. Yeah, sure. Versus a guy like Jamie Newman who goes to Georgia, where the talk all of last season was Jake Fromm's regressing. Georgia's offense is a joke. They won't let him air it out and do what he can do. Oh, by the way, we missed on Justin Fields, who's going to New York at Ohio State. You know what I mean? For the Heisman. So
that goes back to what I talked about earlier, though. That goes back to the idea that you know what happened with Joe Burrow was the perfect storm. You could put a great offense in without the right people to run it, and it wouldn't work. So this is not saying that like what Drew Brees has done in the NFL, what Joe Burrow did at LSU was like the perfect fit. You had to have the right running back, you had the right offensive line, you had the right receivers, you had the right quarterback. I mean, it kind of all worked. How many programs are trying to do that? You know, let's bring in, you know, we may see it at USC. You know, is Slovis on the list? You already put it away.
No.
I imagine he is.
He's going off at 40-1. He's in the same group as like Kellen Mond, Sean Clifford, Kyle Trask, Brock Purdy.
Right.
That group.
Yeah. But you know, it's interesting. But if you look at the numbers that he will most likely put up with the talent they have, even though they lost talent at receiver, USC's going to have talent. He's going to put up ridiculous numbers if he can stay healthy. Yeah, he's going to have Oklahoma type numbers, in my opinion.
Let's keep this thread going because I like what you're saying about the quarterbacks, and obviously you've played the position, so you know. Slovis right out of the gate, week 1, assuming that again, you know,
we have a game
asterisk that this game actually happens and that it happens week 1. Southern Cal, Alabama, Jerry's World. Let's go. I mean, you want a Heisman moment? right out of the gates. Week 1, you get that chance. Justin Fields, Ohio State, week 2. Again, asterisk that this game happens because it's supposed to be at Autzen Stadium in Eugene.
Right.
Ohio State at Oregon, week 2. You mentioned the Ducks defense might be the best in the country. Justin Fields, 41 touchdowns, 3 interceptions last year. That was the ratio, 41-3. Can you do it at Autzen Stadium? I know it's not going to be a packed house, right? It's not going to be the Autzen that we have come to know, but still, can you get it done on the road in that environment? Because if you can, Trevor Lawrence isn't going to have those types of games, although Clemson does play Notre Dame this year.
Which is that type of game.
That helps.
So like to me, man. First of all, that got me almost chills just thinking about it, right? And it makes me hate COVID even more because it makes me sick that a game at Autzen that matters that much, which is, I mean, I don't know. You've never been to Autzen Stadium, have you?
I have not been to Autzen. However, I know that if
my wife just,
yes,
I know.
that's great.
You can come say hi.
Show. That's great.
She's yeah.
She's cooking the house.
Goodbye.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Our ratings just went through the roof. That's great.
Yeah, well,
that's phenomenal.
She should be sitting right behind me more often, or right here, and I can go sit back.
Yeah, I mean, look, it can't hurt.
So that's quarterbacks. That's what we do. Did I say that out loud?
Well, I mean, look, if you played quarterback at UCLA, I would expect nothing less.
Well, and listen, and remember, I know because it's been a long time, but like I pointed out earlier, right before Cade McNown and company, who's a college Hall of Famer, won 20 straight games and was this close to a national championship game. We did play in a Rose Bowl that I played into, like the jerseys. There's those roses back there. We didn't win, but that's okay. We played in it. Anyway, what were we talking about? I got distracted by my
if Server
beautiful
was here,
wife.
He'd flash the Uncle Rico background on him.
As he should. But so those games. So let's just. I don't think SC's ready for Alabama yet.
That's a neutral site game, by the way. That's
I don't think so. And what worries me, and if we remember Slovis last year, he's not afraid to get hit. He's not afraid to stand in the pocket and, like every great quarterback, and throw the ball and take a beating, which he may against an Alabama squad. Because one of the things that people don't talk about enough when they talk about USC is when Pete Carroll was at USC, if you go back and look at the roster that he put together, I'm telling you, man, you can name a ton of receivers. You can name every quarterback in that era, from Sanchez to Booty to Leinart to any of them. Palmer, they were all, they had talent, but they were good up front. They kicked your butt in the trenches. And this is what Cristobal is trying to do at Oregon right now. He's got the best offensive lineman in the country. He's got a defense that's amazing. Now they have to replace quarterback, and we'll see what happens there. But if we remember right, Oregon, in my opinion, was better than Oklahoma last year, and probably would have played better in the playoff than Oklahoma did. But if you remember right, Justin Herbert wasn't ripping it all over the field. That's not the way Mario Cristobal coaches.
Right.
He was playing like a pro quarterback. He was, he ran a lot more than I think people thought he would to make them Rose Bowl champions, which was impressive. He did what it took to win games. So I don't know if they need the greatest quarterback play, the way that he's kind of becoming a little bit like and the Pac-12's been like this a little bit with Utah and Oregon, where they want to play defense and have solid quarterback play and be able to run the ball. And that's kind of what's been winning. Even if you go back to the great Stanford teams that won a lot in the Pac-12. So I love those games. I think there's Heisman moments in there, but it's going to stink that, Autzen doesn't, for example, doesn't get home field advantage. Even Jerry's World, Alabama typically travels really, really well, but guess what? USC fans would show up for that game, but they're probably not going to be able to.
You're going to be saying Roll Tide a lot during that game, aren't you, buddy?
It's weird. Yes, I will. And I know that you think I hate Alabama, and I don't. I respect what they do. I love Tua as a player. I hope he comes back, and I hope he has a great NFL career. But USC and the Pac-12 needs to win. They're in an image, and whether it's Oregon whether it's, for a while it was Washington, and now we know with Coach Jimmy Lake at the helm, who knows how he's going to replace Chris Peterson, because I think Washington's a program that can win at a very high level. We need, Chip Kelly in year 3 needs to win games. SC needs to win games. Clay Helton's gone. It's got to suck to keep hearing
People
Urban.
are surprised that he's still the guy coming into this season, right?
And both of those schools, both our California schools have new ADs now.
That's right.
Okay. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens, because, when you inherit coaches, you want your guy, but if Helton wins this year, great. But if Urban Meyer's still hovering out there and people think that there's a possibility of hiring him, and who knows if there is or not, who knows if he wants to come back. But I don't think SC's ready in the trenches for Alabama yet. Talent-wise, I think they can hang. In the trenches, I think that's where they lose that game. On the other one, I think Oregon can play in this game. I wish it wasn't so early.
Sure.
The only reason why is because I think they need to get, one side has a quarterback that's a Heisman Trophy candidate and the other side doesn't.
Well, and we remember Oregon playing big glamour non-conference games early in the season, because last year Auburn, Bo Nix broke Oregon's heart.
Was it like a second left? Come on.
It was, in fairness, Herbert had a shot. He had that final drive, but he decided to throw the Hail Mary about 10 rows deep into the end zone. Let's move on. We're bouncing back and forth. Wayne and I are doing our top 10 storylines, really top 9, because Wayne did one COVID storyline, which is, that's fine. 'Tis the season.
It was more about during the season, though, because I could see that happening, where we have all kinds of problems during the season.
But we're trying to keep it football focused because it's July 4th weekend. Folks want content. There's plenty of COVID content out there, so let's talk ball. One of my storylines, and we've kind of danced around this topic, do we have Oklahoma fatigue? Because look, Oklahoma, great program, made it to the playoff, won a lot of Big 12 championships lately. Not very competitive when we get to the Final Four, okay? I could rattle you off the box scores and talk about the LSU beatdown last year, talk to you about the Alabama beatdown the year before that. But Oklahoma gets in these games. Now, the Rose Bowl against Georgia was epic. One of the best football games I've seen in my lifetime. 51-48 in overtime. Phenomenal game. Guess what, though? You still lost. So
I was in the stands of that game, by the way.
At some point, you and 200,000 other Georgia fans, because everyone will tell their grandkids they were at that game when only half of them were. Wayne was there. At some point, I need Lincoln Riley to win a playoff game. Like, it's great that you get there, and it's great that I keep hearing about how your defense is better, but it's really not that good when you go up against some of these big boys, not just from the SEC, but, the Clemsons of the world. Like, at some point, Oklahoma is going to start becoming this thing where, hey, man, I know that you're going to rack up wins, and I know that you're going to rack up yards, and your quarterbacks are going to win Heisman trophies, but can you actually win a damn playoff game? So that's one of my things. Do we have Oklahoma fatigue? Let's see.
So
I'm a harsh grader, aren't I?
This is like no, because
I'm just a hater.
So listen, Steven, it's like you haven't got me fired up yet today, which is a problem. I don't disagree with you, because what we were talking about earlier with Michigan is kind of a tricky thing, because Michigan hasn't been in the playoff, right? Correct?
That's right.
They right. This is a team, Oklahoma, that's a step above. They're in the playoffs all the time. They've been in it several times, but they lose.
Yeah.
Game you mentioned, though,
out of the 6 years, Oklahoma's been there.
That game, the first half, if you remember, of that Oklahoma-Georgia game, Oklahoma looked unstoppable.
Yes, they were rolling.
And then the running game and the kind of the old school football way of beating you, we're gonna start pounding it down your throat.
Yeah,
that whole the wheels came off.
Thing didn't really work out. Yeah.
Second half was a big deal for Georgia. Anyway, if you're at that level, yeah, the expectation's there. I mean, you're in the playoffs every year. How are you going to get better? It's like, Coach, I get it. We have this. I've never understood the concept of, if you have an elite, fast-paced, we score quick, yeah, your defense is probably going to take a little bit of a hit. But this idea that you can't do both has been disproven now.
Right.
It's been, we've seen Alabama have a great offense and a great defense. We've seen Clemson have a great offense and a great defense. We've seen, Ohio State be able to do both. You can do both. You're going to give up some numbers, but if you're going to have the number one offense in the country and you can have the 40th best defense in the country, you got a shot. You've got a shot. So they have gotten better, but they've got to keep getting better. But here's going back to what I would say about fatigue, and the same thing is in the ACC. If you want Clemson, if you're getting tired of Clemson, if you're getting tired of Alabama, if you're getting tired of Ohio State, if you're getting tired of Oklahoma, okay, TCU, don't lay an egg.
Beat them.
Okay, you've got a coach that's proven that he can win. Okay, Texas, okay, Tom Herman, you've been there for a while now. You've got a quarterback that's played in a whole lot of big football games.
Yeah, Sam Ehlinger is 35 years old.
He's it feels like he's been there forever. Okay, and as a matter of fact, I remember when he came in and started playing, and Shane Buechele, who's now still playing college football too, right?
SMU.
He's at SMU, and he's coming back this year. So these guys have been there for a long time. So Texas, beat them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like show that, like, and those are two programs that historically, when you think about Texas and you think about TCU, they can play defense, at least historically. Now, that conference has taken a hit. Iowa State, take the next step. You're not a historically program that people, when they hear your name, they don't go, ooh, but you've been good. Step up. So, to me, if you want to stop, whoever, like, again, you think about the USC years. If you want to beat them, step up and beat them. If you want, Washington to stop winning, beat them. And Oregon's kind of done that. Now, if you want to take down Oregon, beat them. I mean, this is the way it's supposed to work. LSU did it last year. We had Alabama fatigue. Okay. Even though I respect Alabama, it was great to not have to watch Alabama in the national championship game just because.
Yeah. But no, to your point, the Alabama fatigue thing, it was a thing until they lost in the Iron Bowl, and then folks didn't really have to worry about that potentially playing out again. So, by the way, just real quick, just to nail the dismount on Oklahoma, I did the math. The last 3 playoff games, Oklahoma has given up a combined 162 points.
Divide
in
that by
3 playoff games.
Wow.
That's not great. Okay. So while it is great that Spencer Rattler and those boys are going to hang 50 on everybody, when it comes time for Oklahoma to get into the playoffs and they're a double-digit underdog again, I don't want to hear it because I've seen this before. That's all I'm saying. So
yeah, I know is it your story or my story now?
It is your chance to drop a storyline on me, Wayne.
So just to throw this out there, though, before going back to my analogy of the coaches waiting in line to get into the supermarket where all the athletes are hanging out.
COVID coaches, yes.
COVID coaches. The idea is where defensive linemen, whatever aisle that's in, are not easy to recruit. Oklahoma has great offensive line. They do a really good job of recruiting offensive linemen. Getting defensive linemen, I swear there are a couple schools out there that have second-string guys that would be superstars at other schools. It's hard to recruit those guys.
Well, and that's something like I know you're used to being on the sidelines for big boy football because you do it every week on the UCLA radio crew. But when the rare instances that I'm on a sideline for a football game, that is the thing that jumps out at me, the layperson, the most. Like, sure, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, quarterbacks these days, the guys who are 6'5", who are yoked, okay, that's impressive. But seeing a guy who's like 3'10" and runs a 4'6" and has 0 body fat on him, like these guys on the D-line, like you're talking about, these edge rushers, like that's the thing to me, who's never played the game and never will, because genetically, I mean, look, I'm 5'9". It's not going to happen.
Right.
That's the thing where I'm just my jaw hits the floor. Like, that's the stuff, to your point, Wayne. Those guys don't grow on trees, man. Kayvon Thibodeau and those guys, that just doesn't happen. Those guys aren't going to Oklahoma. And maybe that's where, to your point, they need to take that next step. You got to bring in a Haas or two like that.
By the way, and I have to remember this before I tell you my next story. As a person who teaches and as a person who is a broadcaster and as a person who does a podcast with the brilliant minds such as yourself, please, everybody, the analogy of buying athletes in a store please don't take that the wrong way. I didn't. It was just something that popped into my head. It wasn't anything.
No, you're
with
talking about shopping, like recruiting.
No. It was recruiting, but you know the world we live in right now. Like you have to be really careful about how you
worry about
how you word things, and so
Seriously.
it wasn't meant that way. It was just supposed to be a visual. And most of these athletes, and I have a whole 2 pages written on this, by the way, of something I want to talk about later, and we're not going to have enough time, I'm sure. So I'm going to get to the next story. Transfer quarterbacks.
Yeah, talk to me.
And I'm talking to you about this because the story to me, and we could list the transfer quarterbacks, because last year we know that I believe that all 4 of our quarterbacks in our national in the playoffs were transfer quarterbacks,
except Trevor. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
3 of the 4. That's right. Correct. I actually think this year, because of, again, I can't get away from it, because of COVID and shutting down spring practice is actually a huge deal. I've never thought that spring practice was, spring practice is great. It's great if you have position battles. It's great, but you can still be fine with summer workouts and everything else. But if you think about it, all of these new quarterbacks that haven't had a fair opportunity to get used to their receivers, to get used to their system, to get used to their new coordinator. Not only that, the summer workouts have been limited. Some schools, I just read yesterday that Arizona stopped allowing, they stopped, they were kind of bringing in athletes in waves, like 20 at a time, and they stopped it because Arizona's had a huge outbreak
lately. Yeah.
No, I know.
Like Italy.
So if you look at this year and you look at a Justin Fields, you look at a Trevor Lawrence, you look at a Sam Ehlinger, you look at an Ian Book, you go down the list of returning quarterbacks that have started with their same offensive coordinator, it's a huge advantage.
Yeah. How about Georgia? They went out and got 2. All right, so you get Jamie Newman from Wake Forest. You got this dual threat guy, right? Then they landed JT Daniels from Southern Cal, who, by the way, I've seen pictures of this dude. I mean, with the mop coming out the back and like some of the facial hair growth. I mean, it is spectacular. That guy walking around right now, woo.
That should be there. Actually, should be, because remember when he came out of high school, he's a big time recruit.
Yeah, he's like one of the top pro style quarterbacks.
Big time recruit
coming out. Yeah,
he will be. He has the ability to be. He's kind of more like Jake Fromm. But one of the things that I loved about Jake Fromm was his maturity, his ability to deal with all the nonsense. I mean, in some cases, he probably took more flack than he should have. I think Jake Fromm has a chance to be a guy that hangs around the NFL for a decade. I don't know if he's ever going to be a guy, but I think he'll be someone that you'll want to have on your squad. I think I just see him that way, and maybe he gets a shot, and who knows. JT at USC, and some of the things his high school coaches said and the media and some of the stuff in Southern California, I hope that this process for him has been a maturing process. We've all seen this when you come out of high school and you go into and you walk onto a college campus and you act like, hey, I'm a 5-star guy. That is a difficult. We've heard coaches like Nick Saban talk about this. Like, sorry, but
hey, man, we're all 5-star guys.
We're gonna bring you in here to Georgia, but you're gonna have to be, bring your lunch pail, go to work, and who cares how good you were in high school? It doesn't matter anymore. And right. I see it at UCLA. This is what's crazy about sports. You could be coaching or playing, and I guarantee you, this is all over the country. The idea that high school athletes are on TV all the time. They get to read. I mean, every single college athlete, if you look at their profile, it says how many stars next to their name.
And by the way, those profiles have been getting built and written since these kids were in like 6th grade.
That's my point.
8th grade.
And so you're dealing with athletes that I've watched athletes that over my years at UCLA, where a guy catches 3 passes for 75 yards, and you get done with the game and we lose. And you get done with the game, and he's posting it and putting videos out of how good he is. I'm like, dude, first of all, no. Like, let me tell you what good is. This is not good.
Man. That's what it is. I mean,
it's crazy, and yet, I think that a lot of young players, this whole getting humbled thing. Now, Is transferring sometimes the right move for quarterbacks? I never used to say this, but yeah, of course it is. In the world we live in now, sometimes it's your only option because you're not going to play.
Right.
You need to go play. But going to Georgia is an interesting move, right? It's an interesting move because you're not guaranteed to play there either. You know what I mean? It's like some of these guys, when you go to a from one big program to another, there's no guarantee.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating story. And I'm not trying to pick on Georgia. I just think that there's a lot of storylines there that make it a very interesting, I don't want to say an experiment, because it's been proven that Kirby Smart can win games and win SEC championships there. But I mean, look, that's just going to be a fascinating thing to play out, because the offense last year it wasn't Michigan State, right? It wasn't, like sipping NyQuil from a bottle. Okay. But it was challenging. Right.
Yeah.
And it was challenged. So between Jamie Newman and JT Daniels, take your pick. I mean, somebody's got to go out there and hang 40 every week. By the way, Georgia at Alabama week 3, if you're into that sort of thing.
I am into that sort of thing.
Little asterisk there for those of you in
this
COVID
needs to happen.
I know.
I mean, I know the thing right now is wear your mask, right? I mean, the Cook household, we're wearing our masks. I mean,
that's great.
But there are obviously people out there that aren't.
Well, there's people. The problem, again, I don't want to turn this into a COVID
yeah.
show, but look, the wear your mask thing is great.
I know.
You should be wearing your mask. You should have been wearing it for the last 3 months, okay?
Yeah,
and now we are where we are. But regardless, Georgia,
your next story,
Alabama, in front of about, what do you think, Wayne? Maybe 20,000 people at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Maybe.
I've been reading about how they're going to do this. In stadiums, if I know that UCLA is trying to be as creative and proactive as they can be on season ticket sales, and how they're going to put people into the stadium. It's tricky. It's really, really tricky. It's that beautiful woman that was in here earlier. She's a cancer survivor twice, and she only has one kidney. So, there are people that are at risk.
Right.
And so, it's really, really crazy how they're going to spread people out. How are they going to get people to the turn? I mean, it's going to be an event. Mm-hmm. Whatever they come up with. And like you said, is 20,000 what they in a stadium that holds 80 or 90,000, and what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be bizarre. It's going to be bizarre world, man. Hopefully just for one season, right? Like, let's go science. Let's find this vaccine and inject it in everybody's veins so we can get on with our life. All right, let's keep it moving with the storylines on the field. Top storylines of college football in 2020. Who made the best offseason hire? We're not going to know who made the worst offseason hire for probably a couple of years, but I want to know which school, which athletic director went out and hit a home run in the hiring, because I'm looking at this list, Wayne. You got some big boy names, okay? Not just in the SEC, but nationally. I mean, a lot of folks. The coaching carousel was spinning. Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, Mike Leach at Mississippi State, Nick Rolovich up in Pullman, taking over the Cougs, moving from the Islands to the Palouse. I mean, look, take your pick. The Jimmy Lake promotion at Washington. I think this is going to be a fascinating Norvell at Florida State, who you mentioned, coming from Memphis. I think it's going to be a fascinating first couple of weeks of the season, not just because of everything going on, but, hey, if you're a first-year head coach, Mel Tucker at Michigan State, love that hire, by the way. Think that's going to be great. If he wears shorts on the sidelines at East Lansing like he did in Boulder this year, 2 thumbs up. That's going to be a great look. But how is this going to play out? Because not only do you have everything going on with being a first-year head coach at a new school, but you've got COVID. And can you keep your guys focused? What's that learning curve going to be like? I think it's going to be great. I can't wait to see it play out.
So just because my last story, so we don't, because I know we've gone probably longer, is new coaches are at a huge disadvantage. Just like we talked about with transfers. If you're a brand new coach, and you're stepping in this year, and you lose spring practice, which for new coaches, spring practice is huge. It's really, really big. I actually think of all the coaches that you mentioned. It's funny that you mentioned Mel Tucker. I feel like he's a similar. I feel like Michigan State and Tucker with his SEC background, they're going to still be kind of Michigan State. They're going to want to run the ball, play really good defense, and it'll be interesting to see how much that changes them. I'm not sure. I'm really not that sure. So, and Michigan State's a hard place to win. I mean, you're sitting there. It's you can be good, but how
you're
good?
in a division with Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State right off the bat.
It's exactly right, and it's a very, very hard place to win. And so I think that's interesting. The person, and you mentioned two of these that I think are going to have the best shot. And I know it's different, but it's similar idea, I think. And we've talked to him on CSN before, Coach Rolovich. I think he's going to do a good job at Washington State. I think what they did at Hawaii, while different than what Mike Leach does, is in the same family tree. You know, it's in the same world.
Yeah.
We're going to spread it out. We're going to throw the ball over the field. I think they've recruited for that. I think they have a running back,
Max Borghi,
who
one
I
of my
love,
favorite players in college football.
who I actually think, and you're wearing a Cougar shirt right now, by the way. Did our man?
Yeah, go Cougs. Yeah.
Who gave that? Did our boy?
I got a guy in Pullman. He keeps.
I know you do.
He keeps me in fresh swag. Yeah. So
okay.
Shout out to my buddy Chaz out there.
I was just gonna say it has to be Chaz now. Anyway, I think he has a chance to step in at Washington State. And by the way, the North is still, Oregon, Washington, and this year probably Cal too. Cal has a quarter. If Cal can stay healthy at quarterback, Cal has a chance to be really good this year. They got a lot of players coming back. But either way, Washington State has been good, and they've got a player that I think was underutilized. I mean, Borghi needed to get the rock more. I mean, this guy is a poor man's, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he's a stud. I mean, he moves well. He's a bowling ball. He catches the ball in the backfield. I mean, he should be the focal point of that offense. So I think he has a chance. And then I think the more difficult, but I'm going to give you the long-term one. I think Norvell at Florida State will have them competing with Clemson in 3 years. It's not going to happen right away.
Well, his predecessor got 2.5. Okay, Willie Taggart did not get a third season.
I'm telling you, man, he can coach, and he stepped in it. He stepped in a big pile of dog crud, right away with some of his comments. But I don't think it was intentionally. He made a mistake, but I think he'll recruit. I think he has a chance now at a school that's been a powerhouse to really do things. And so I think that's a place where I see a lot of success.
Okay. I'm with you. 3 years these days is I don't want to say that that's an eternity, but when Kirby Smart took over at Georgia and he had them playing for a national championship in year 2, that didn't help. Right?
Different. But totally different because remember, Mark Richt was winning 10 games a year. He was Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah. Okay.
He was when you have a program, it's like I tell people about Chip Kelly. When Chip Kelly took over for Oregon,
yeah, the cupboard was bare.
No. When Chip Kelly took over at Oregon,
I thought you were talking about UCLA. Yeah.
They had won 10 games the year before. Okay, they were a program that was on the rise. They were right there, and they just couldn't take the next step, and Chip Kelly helped get them to the next step. When Chip Kelly took over at UCLA, it was a 4-win team. And it kind of had to – so there's different – and Florida State is pretty low right now. So this is a program that has not been good, and it's going to take more than just one season to turn them around, I think. But I don't think it's going to be – I think you can do it in year 2, or even year 1, go to a bowl game. But we know that we live in the world of, if you're not undefeated or if you're not 11-1, something's wrong.
That's correct.
But if you go to a bowl game and start showing fans that you're going in the right direction and they start seeing how exciting that offense can be, and the athletes that he can get are going to be better than the offenses that he had at the talent that he got at Nevada. So I think he'll do a good job. I think it just might take a little while because I think he has a ways to go.
Dave Aranda at Baylor, Big fan of that hire. I like that hire. Don't know how it's going to play out, but I'm fascinated by it. Sam Pittman in Arkansas. Who knows? Like it's Arkansas. You're in the SEC West. Like, how do you measure success? Is that 4 wins? Is it 6? I think 6 would be a massive accomplishment out there. But it's going to be fascinating. Greg Schiano back at Rutgers.
I think that was a great hire. I actually feel bad with what happened there and I know there's stories behind this, and I know there's connections to Penn State and it's all the other issues that kind of creep up when you talk about Coach Schiano, but he is a good coach. If you can win at Rutgers, and remember, Rutgers was winning when he was there.
Yeah.
And you talk about how do you measure success? I mean, that was maybe the best run they've ever had. I don't know their history, but I mean, you don't think of Rutgers in football too often. So it'll be really interesting to see what he does there. I think he would have done great in Tennessee, to be honest with you, because he's a good football coach. He really is.
Yeah, until Tennessee fans got wind of that and
no, I know.
Literally tried to burn the place to the ground. All right, Wayne, what do you got for me? I think we're at like number 8 or 9 on the storylines list. So
yeah, we're that was it. My last one was about coaches too.
Okay.
So can I jump into? Do you have another storyline?
Well, I had one more. I got one more. Yeah.
Because my last one was kind of like the coaching one. It was basically new coaches being added. Like if you're Carl Durrell and
you didn't come up with alternates. I mean that's on you, buddy.
Well, I have as you know that in my world I have pages of other things and okay, I'll do mine. Would you do your college football?
Is that your lyric book? Is that where you write down all your lyrics?
No, these are all of my, as you pointed out, I have triggers. And I talk to the radio and I talk to the TV and I watch shows. And, as a teacher, I have too much free time during the summer.
That's correct.
So I have some things I want to talk about. But you give me your last story first.
My last story was who is going to be this year's Utah. Remember Utah, right? Going into the Pac-12 championship game. Everybody was high on the Utes. Win and you're in, right?
Maybe it's Utah.
Win and you're in. Well, they got Jake Bentley.
We've been talking about transfer quarterbacks.
Jake
maybe
Bentley
it's Utah.
Wasn't a bad quarterback at South Carolina. He couldn't stay healthy, and here comes Minshew and not Minshew. I'm sorry, Helinski. And then that was the end of it. That was that they closed the book on Jake Bentley. But he's a player. I'm just curious, who's this year's team that's going to flirt with destiny? Like who's going to be a team who's sitting there in November with 10 wins? And we're looking at the schedule being like, win 1 more, win 2 more, and you're going to crash the party. Because Utah was that team last year until they ran up against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship and got absolutely housed. Curious to know who that's going to be this season.
If you're not a fan of the West Coast or the Pac-12, you may think that Utah's been on the cusp of being really good for a long time.
Yeah.
They're a solid football program. It's hard, and again, I know that we don't have that one elite team right now in the Pac-12, and it seems like every other conference does. They have an elite team, and then they have a bunch of people that are well below them. In the Pac-12, it's really easy to slip up. Whether it's Oregon losing to who did they lose? Arizona State?
That's correct.
Okay, that they would have won that game 100 or 99 out of 100 times. UCLA beat Arizona State last year. The Pac-12 is a weird conference.
9-game conference slate, man. 9 games.
It is. It's hard, but it's and you see this, like you see the North Carolina will beat somebody, right? There are teams that can do this in some of these conferences, which is why it's so difficult. So anyway, I would say, I wouldn't call him an outlier, but Oregon, even after losing Justin Herbert, has a really good chance with that defense to be there. Texas is an interesting story this year. Are they going to make that next step? I thought Tom Herman was a good hire. I still do. But as you pointed out earlier, it's time now. It's time. It's time to be that team that could Texas be sitting there, and they were last year, really close to taking on Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Is it Florida? We talked about it earlier. Is Florida going to take the next step? Is Trask going to be good enough? Georgia, Auburn, Notre Dame, Penn State. These are all teams that are kind of in that next rung. Mm-hmm. You know, you mentioned Michigan earlier. Is this the year they take that next step?
All right, you wanted to nail the dismount. You had something for me. Our storylines are done. There you go.
Well,
Your top 10 college football
I have
storylines,
two.
courtesy of Wayne and I. You're welcome.
I'm going to go on a tirade really quick,
Okay.
and this is one of the triggers. And feel free to jump in whenever you want to.
Do I
But
need to plug in an external hard drive for this? Do we have enough bandwidth to make this happen?
I don't know. And
boy.
you know, I do have a 14-year-old in the house, and I usually tell him don't be streaming anything during this, but we'll make it work. I read something and I saw some feedback. I don't know how many rabbit holes you've gone down on social media, but it's a pretty dark place. And one of the comments is that was made was, you know, yeah, sure, great. Coaches are out marching with their athletes for change, and they're doing this, but that's not enough. What are coaches going to do for their players? You know, more than just, you know, the basic, you know, lip service. It hit me in a way that I don't know if people that never have played college football or any college sports or even played for a great high school coach understand. Most coaches, when they talk about former players, they're so proud of what they become as, you know, husbands, as fathers, as, you know, businessmen, as what, you know, whatever they're doing, and they're proud of them. I mean, I still have a great relationship with my coach Terry Donahue, and I remember when I was, and again, I know I'm a white player, and I know that part of this is the racial, you know, Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm on board. I want change. I really do. We need to get better. But I have watched and I have seen athletes, both white, Samoan, African American, you know, you name it, whose lives have been changed because of football. They've been saved because of football. They've been taken from an environment that was not great, and they've been thrust into a situation where they are forced to grow up, to be men, to be taught, to be mentored. It's just, to me, you know, James Washington is a great UCLA football player who played for the Cowboys and had interceptions in Super Bowls. I want to say he might have even been defensive MVP. I've heard him speak many times about how Terry Donahue saved his life. You know, went into a neighborhood that not a lot of coaches would go into, and brought him to UCLA. I know that for me personally, and I don't like to admit this, but I almost failed out of UCLA. And my offensive coordinator, Homer Smith, who Alabama fans will know because he's been there, and my head coach, Terry Donahue, came to my dorm one night, took me to my parents' house. I had to sit in a car and drive an hour to Thousand Oaks and sit in my living room and have the coaches basically tell my parents that I wasn't living up to my end of the bargain. They thought I was partying too much. They thought I wasn't going to school, and they were right. That's a moment I look back on, and I hated it, and it was one of the most uncomfortable times of my life, but they went to bat for me. And when I almost got kicked out of school, Coach Donahue actually got me one last shot. And it was weird because I was the third string quarterback and I hadn't played a down of football yet. And the next year I was the starter. It wasn't, he didn't do anything illegal. He just got me a chance. That was like on, you know, Animal House. I was on double secret probation. And again, I guarantee you that if you went out and you talk to most athletes, the scholarship that they acquire, and I know the media makes it out like scholarships are not enough, to give people that have, and I've said this forever, as a teacher, the one thing I know, like when you study, and I'll give you two examples, Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, first black man to speak to a president in the White House. They were both educated. Both of them were, which is why the world listened. You know what I mean? People, when you're educated and you have something to say, people will listen to you. And this is a great opportunity for a lot of people. You know, my dad comes from a family where nobody went to college, and he went to college to play football, and he got a degree, and now both of his sons got a degree. Football has taken people from all different backgrounds and all different walks of lives, and if it's done well and it's done right and the right program, it has saved so many lives, and I hate that we belittle it. It drives me crazy. I think a scholarship is a huge gift. I don't think it's somehow a punishment. I don't think it's, you know, oh, look at you.
Look,
I love it.
Wayne, he's talking right now.
Yeah. Hello.
You can't hear him. No, I can hear him. You can hear him. Thank you, buddy.
Well, oh, that's my flower.
Oh, this one's mine. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Julian. I appreciate that. You want to say hi to Wayne?
Hi, Julian.
Hey.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he got a bad haircut, but that's okay. He's still going to rise up. He's
It's all
gonna,
good, man.
Yeah, I know. See, he's got football jerseys and footballs back there. Pretty cool, huh? He played football. Something you will never do, so don't worry about it. You're not going to be blessed with those genes. Hey, I'll be out in just a second, buddy, okay? Thank you for my flower. Go ahead, I'm listening.
So, anyway, bud,
That's life with a 3-year-old. You've been there though.
No, and I love that. Don't you want, to be honest with you, when we look at our kids, man, we want them to be in an environment where, it's not like it is right now. Let's just put it that way.
Well,
it's an ugly place.
I think everything you've said there is valid and carries weight. What's interesting with the student athlete of 2020 is that they now have a platform and a voice that is more powerful and carries a little bit more weight than it did 20, 30 years ago. And so these kids are using it to enact change, or to at least enact a dialogue where people can get into a room and talk about, this flag is not okay. This statue is not okay. If we've named a building after a guy who owned slaves, we should probably rethink that. Yes, sir. You want to be a part of this conversation too? That's okay. You hang out.
And as a history guy, it's like, I didn't even realize, and this is so stupid, I'm embarrassed, I didn't even realize that was a part of Mississippi's flag.
Yeah. I mean, the stars and bars are not even like hiding.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so, I'm all for.
By the way, Georgia, where I grew up, I mean, they've changed their flags several times in my lifetime.
Right.
They host the SEC's Crown Jewel Championship event every year. It's the football championship.
Yeah.
So while I appreciate, the commissioner coming on and saying, hey, Mississippi needs to change their flag or we're not going to hold events there.
Right.
You got to be careful, because there's a lot of other states in that footprint where there's also what are considered to be offensive flags. So look, the whole thing is changing, man. 2020 is not, it's not 1980. It's not 1990 when you were growing up and doing your thing.
But this is my point though. I knew, see, it's weird that no matter what we talk about now, it always goes back to today's issues. And so what triggered me on this wasn't necessarily, I agree with everything you just said. But to make it out like a young person getting an opportunity to get a scholarship and to learn the life lessons we learned from playing football. Football is really freaking hard. Mm-hmm. It beats you up. I mean, I've got joints that hurt, and they will hurt for the rest of my life because of what I put myself through as a football player. But I would never change any of it. I tell my own boys this: if you can survive, and again, players nowadays are dealing with, well, I shouldn't say nowadays. I mean, shoot, think about what Jackie Robinson dealt with. Think about when you can get through this climate, it changes you. So I guess what I was getting is that as I wish more people would appreciate the scholarship and the opportunity that they have, that voice that they're allowed to have, because it does have the ability. These guys, when they go on to their adult lives, most of them are going to be in great shape because of the training that they're getting from college athletics, from a college education. I just think it should be valued more. I think there's too many people that act like it's nothing, especially when less than 2% of these athletes are going to be playing professional football.
Sure.
You see what I'm getting at? Like, so many, 98% of these guys are going to take this education and the life lessons they learn while playing this sport and be amazing adults because of it. And I don't think we value that enough. I think that's what I was trying to say. I agree with everything you said. Can I push your button? I know you got to go because you have a kid there. Can I push your button one more time?
No, it's okay. I'm just going to feed him chocolate. So
how many winning seasons did Cam Newton have in Carolina?
I mean, he was an MVP and a runner-up
15
in the Super Bowl.
15-1, right? How many winning seasons?
I'm going to say 3. Okay. They did him wrong.
By the way, I am not knocking Cam Newton at all.
Right.
But you've seen somehow, the Patriots are going to be better. Somehow Cam Newton's went. I didn't even know that. I went and looked up Phillip Rivers. I probably should have done it with Matt Ryan. Or Russell Wilson or whatever. He's had 3 winning seasons.
You're saying he's overrated or
Philip
underrated?
Rivers has had 10 where he's been 500 or better.
So hang on though. Are you saying that Cam is overrated or underrated?
I think he's had a couple of amazing seasons, but it's hard to be like elite when you're losing at a clip like that.
I don't think anyone's saying that Cam's elite. I think people are saying because Belichick sees something in him, that's a problem. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the quarterback for New England 2 days ago was going to be Jarrett Stidham. Now it's going to be Cam Newton, and that's a problem for the rest of the NFL because Cam Newton's better than Jarrett Stidham.
I'm not knocking Cam Newton at all. I just was shocked by that, and I know that as a Carolina resident.
Why don't hang on? I think Julian has something he wants to say. Go on. Hang on a second.
And then my Jeep just got smoked on fire when I was going around in circles a lot of times, and then my Jeep just got broken because
Your
the
Jeep
smoke.
is broken?
Yes, because all this, because the when Daddy when Lila was picking blackberries, and then Lila just told me to go around in circles, yeah, and then Justin was
Go on.
saying just.
So wait, do I need to go fix your Jeep? Is that what's
Sounds
happening?
like it exploded and it's on
boy.
fire.
I don't know what happened. I know I was picking blackberries and now the Jeep's not working. So that's a problem. That means I've duty calls, Wayne.
Yep, we're done.
And the smoke just come out of my front engine.
Okay, I'll come fix it, okay? How about that? I'll come fix it. Let's go take a look. Wayne, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Clearly, I'm not good at fixing things. Now I have to try to fix a power wheel. So that should be interesting.
I think you're on it.
Hey, have a good 4th, buddy.
Yeah,
Be
you too.
safe, wear a mask. I know you will.
Always.
And we'll do it again soon, okay?
All right, man. Have a
At
great day.
CS Now Tweets. Check us out on Twitter. We're gone. Have a good 4th. Be safe, everybody.